Running a team is going to be one of the most costly things you do as a small business owner. And what can be even costlier is when they leave you. And today I'm going to be talking to Erica Keswin. She is a workplace strategist with like 20 plus years of experience. She has had a couple good books you have got to check out: Bring Your Humans to Work, Rituals Roadmap, and her latest is coming out this week, Retention Revolution. And it's all about how do we get our people to stay as long as they want, but also to get them to want to stay longer, right? When you put all of this time, energy, and resources into hiring, and then they quit a week in, 30 days in, 3 months in, even a year in, right? Yes, like a year, 2 years, 3 years sounds amazing. But it's even better when you have these lifers who love working for you. I have been in business now for 21 years. I would say 18 of those, I actually started employing people. And I have quite a few people that have been with me for over a decade. And when you get amazing people like that stay with you, that know the brand, that love the business, that are so invested, right? It is just so hard to find people like that if you aren't investing in them and what do they want and what makes them happy. And I'm excited to bring you Erica today because she's going to give you a few tips and strategies to help retain your A players, to help coach them up, or maybe coach them out, right? So anyway, I am excited to share Erica Keswin. You are definitely going to want to go grab her latest book, Retention Revolution. Enjoy. Erica, welcome. I am so excited to have you back. You got to come hang out with us. When was it? Back in July with our mastermind.
Yes.
They loved it. It was so good. And I knew we had to get you on the podcast. So welcome to Well-Oiled Operations.
I am excited to be here.
So before we dive in, and I know I just gave your intro, but I would love to hear kind of in your words, like your background, your story, how you got here today.
Great. So I've always worked on the people side of business, which I describe as helping companies improve performance through their people. So I've been in human resources roles and coaching roles and leadership development roles, all those different kinds of things. And then I started really looking, this was back in 2010, looking at the impact of technology, sort of that interrelationship between people and technology, and the good, the bad, and the ugly. And as you know, in your world and in the businesses you've grown, relationships really are at the center. And I think technology can help fuel that. Look, we're on this podcast today, and I met with your mastermind via technology, but we also have to then be more intentional about making sure that those connections happened. And so that led me to my first book, which was Bring Your Human to Work, because just because we are there physically doesn't mean that we are present, emotionally or psychologically. From there, I wrote a book about rituals, which is a tool for any leader to make their employees and their customers feel more connected, which then led me to this book, which comes out on September 26th, and it's called The Retention Revolution.
I'm so excited. Okay. I didn't ask you this last time, and it just kind of sparked when you were talking about the tech stuff. With the new world of AI, and people saying like, oh, you can just get a job description on, Chat GPT and like all of the things. What is your take on that? And do you encourage it? Like anything you want to share there?
So with all things tech, my take on it is we need to find the sweet spot between tech and connect. Again, let's leverage it for its greatness. Yeah, dip into Chat GPT, check it out, see what can be helpful for you, but then put it in its place and connect on a deeper level, with your own writing or with your own conversation or with your own sales call. At least in 2023, we're humans and not robots. And so I still have hope that humanity is going to play, a big role. And I think that, and I know, you can tell when something is just used, at least today, via AI versus something having that human touch.
Yeah. And you can tell when something's automated and it's this mass broadcast. It's been sent to, dozens and dozens or maybe hundreds or thousands of people. So I think Yes, I agree with you. Like, I'm not anti-technology or anti-AI, but I'm saying like use it with caution and use it with common sense, right? When you're reading some of these things, you're like, oh, I would never post this. I would never put this out there. So
Right.
Interesting to hear you say that. Okay. So why retention revolution? Why now? Why was it this time to write this book?
Yeah. So over the last, with the pandemic and in the years that followed, one of the things that I, like everyone else, started to wonder way back in the beginning of all of this was, why were people quitting? And what could companies do to bring people back? And then I, like many people out there, made this assumption that to solve this problem of retention and to get people back, we needed to come up with this perfect cocktail of compensation, benefits, and perks. And that's what we needed to do to get people to come back. And I quickly realized that I was asking the wrong question. And the wrong question was, how do we bring them back? Because the train had left the station and we weren't and we aren't going back to the way things were. And so this pendulum that kept swinging between the employers having the power and the employees having the power, back and forth, actually broke down this notion that employers and employees really needed to be on opposite sides of the bargaining table. And that, I believe, was and is to everyone's benefit. And so now that the retention revolution is, the world of work has changed. People are looking at their careers differently. They're looking at it as a portfolio. Chances are one day your employees will leave. And if we shift our thinking to say, how can we understand what people want when they work with us, give it to them early and often, let them know about these things during onboarding and even recruiting. And clearly, unless, if someone has cheated or stolen from you, that's an aside. But if someone just says to you, okay, Stacy, I'm going to go and I'm ready to do something else. We need to shift our thinking into this. Okay, I'm going to try not to say, you're dead to me or don't let the door hit you in the behind, but think about creative ways to stay connected. That's the way the world is moving anyway. And if we can lean into that, work becomes more of this virtuous cycle. And retention may not be the goal, but it may end up being a byproduct.
Yeah. And I'm a big believer in like, why waste your time burning bridges? Like, it's just so much better to end on good terms, especially if somebody's already choosing to leave. Whatever you're going to say is probably not going to get them. I always get nervous too, because when somebody leaves, I can be a pretty good salesman, and I don't want to convince you to come back if you don't really want to. Right. So let them leave and keep your dignity. And don't burn a bridge, because maybe they're not coming back, but maybe their sister's going to be looking and they actually liked working for you and they might pass your info along. And we have people that used to work for us that are still watching our Instagram stories. They're still, DMing and checking in. And why not keep those doors open and support them?
Right. What we're seeing is there's many boomerangs. People leave for greener pastures and they realize that they're kind of brown and they come back. And there's a lot of data about the impact of boomerangs. They get up to speed more quickly. They already know the culture and the values, and they tend to end up staying longer than the average person that next time around. They, to your point, refer friends, family, and they become amazing brand ambassadors. And so it's a big shift in thinking for many people. But again, people are going to leave anyway. So we might as well approach this a little bit differently.
Yeah. And it's kind of like if a client were to leave you, which of course our clients are leaving all the time, right? How would you react or behave to them when they're like, oh, I'm going to do this instead? You would do the same thing, or you hopefully would do the same thing treating an employee or a contractor or somebody else leaving as well. Okay. Exactly. I love that. Exactly. So I know the question was like, how do we bring them back? And I would love to dig deep into, what do we need to do to get them to stay? Like, what can we do before they even bring that conversation? Not that they're not going to leave at some point, but how do we prolong it as much as we can and keep them happy?
Yeah. So I would say there's three things that I would focus on as a CEO, as a leader, as a manager. This would be my top three. Number one is we need to help our people grow up, down, and sideways. And we need to, if learning is an important part of your culture, we need to talk about it when we're recruiting them. We need to talk about it during onboarding. We need to make sure that people feel comfortable talking about how they want to grow and develop, because if leaders don't create their own internal ecosystem for growth to move people, in internal mobility, hands down, they're going to leave to go somewhere else. So I'm happy to give some examples of how we can do that, but that's one bucket. The second bucket is, I would say that these leaders need to be, bring their human to work, be more human. And the reason why that's become more important is that during the pandemic, leaders, whether they were comfortable with it or they were doing it by default because they had kids and dogs and spouses in the background of their Zooms, they brought more vulnerability and empathy as leaders. And employees got a taste of what that felt like, that they were cared for as people and that leaders were checking in with them and saying, all right, Stacy, like, how are you really, really doing? And then post-pandemic, we've seen that kind of behavior going like this. And if you want people to not wake up one day and be like, oh, I think I'm not happy here, you need to keep really checking in. And then the third is this whole very contentious, in some places, issue of flexibility. And I call it flex for all. That it's not the lifestyles of the rich and flexible, meaning that it's only the knowledge workers that get to sit and work from home. That leaders really need to be thinking about everybody wants some type of autonomy over their lives. And if we can be creative around flexibility, that's a huge one as well.
Okay. Couple things for you. So with this flexibility piece, let's say you have somebody who you are thinking, okay, they've earned the flexibility, they're working from home, all the things, but you're starting to question the workload that is being done. Is it micromanaging to ask them, like, to be using certain softwares that are having them clock in, clock out, actually like track their progress, their work? What do you think about that?
So it's funny that you asked that. I just gave the other day, just a couple of days ago, my first keynote on the retention revolution.
Oh, okay.
And on one of the slides I have, I don't know if you've seen it, but this contraption called a mouse jiggler. And so during the pandemic, many leaders started putting software tracking into their systems because they didn't know how to manage or monitor progress of their people because they weren't seeing them in person. Yeah. And so they put this software in, and then, when something like that happens, all of a sudden new products pop up. Yeah. And there was this product that you could get called a mouse jiggler. And it's hilarious. I have this video of it where I could be walking the dog or could basically be doing anything. And I have this thing on top of my mouse that's making my keyboard move. So if you are so if you're my manager and you are tracking my progress, like if you measure keystrokes, you will get keystrokes, and keystrokes do not mean that I am working. So I would urge leaders not to do that, because I think it actually doesn't have anything to do with the fact that the person's actually working, and really think about outcomes. What are the metrics? Are the metrics sales? Okay, great. Like if I'm crushing it, do you really care if I'm doing it 8 hours a day or 6 hours a day, if I'm beating everybody else? Is it throughput of clients? Is it customer satisfaction? Whatever that is, we really need to shift how we are thinking about measuring performance.
Okay, that is crazy that there is that feature, that mouse. I was like, when you said mouse, I was literally thinking mice. So I'm like, where is she going with this? And then when you said that, I'm like, oh my goodness. Okay. So I think when I'm talking to a lot of my clients, they are having people, they're saying they're not hitting metrics, and I really don't feel like the output is there. So then bottom line is, have the tough conversation, call it out. Like, what's going on? You're working supposedly 8 hours a day, yet these are the results that we're getting. And I think too is really making sure you are inspecting what you expect. You are like auditing in certain ways, and you're checking in. It's going to tell you a whole lot of information that you may not want to see, but you do in the long run to make sure you've got the right people in the right seats.
Yeah. And look, the issue might be that, you know what, it does make sense to have you come into the office more to be able to brainstorm with other people and how they're selling versus this person versus that person. And being very intentional about how and when you do bring people together. I am a big fan of bringing people together in person. I don't think it needs to be all day, every day, but it does need to happen. You just need to look at the nature of your business and geographically where everybody is. And there's 101 ways that people are trying to do this today. But I do think, to your point, that if you're not getting that output, having these conversations and trying to understand what's really, really going on, how this person needs to be supported, and not just looking at, it's kind of the easy way out. All right, I'm tracking them. They're on their computer 8 hours a day. Great.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, there are some people that I have seen that do way better at home than in our building, where it can be really busy and they can get really distracted really fast. So I do think this is not just, remote work is so hard to track or it's so difficult for people. I think some people thrive at home. I personally thrive at home versus being in my buildings. And I've seen certain staff members that are the same, but I also have seen certain people that thrive better in the office, right? So I think really looking at the individuals versus making assumptions is also important too.
Yeah. And also to say, to be strategic and intentional when we come together for certain hours. Our goal is not to be heads down doing our own thing. So on the days we're in the office, the work is actually talking to each other. So you don't come in and feel stressed that you're not getting work done, that is the work. And then after you do your meetings together, the people that work better at home, maybe they can go home, or the people that want to stay in the office can make sure they have a quiet place to work in the office. But it really goes one step deeper in terms of defining what should get done where and when.
Yeah, so good. Now, you brought up just a little bit ago about coaching them up, showing them where they could go. So here's some interesting things that I have seen in my business and as well as some of our clients. Somebody wants to move up. They want to grow with the company, but they're not in a place to promote them to leadership. They're not at that level. What do you do when if somebody wants to be a leader and we're saying there's no way, and we don't even see them being coached into being a leader, they're going to leave. So what do you recommend in that situation?
Well, and that may be okay. That it goes back to being transparent with them, that there aren't these, the chapter in the book where I talk about this, it's called From Ladders to Lily Pads, because there aren't as many rungs in the ladder going up. So you need to move people across. Now, you're raising a different issue where it sounds like in the example you raised, they're never going to be able to move up.
Yeah. At least if they were to stay at this level or how they're performing now.
Right. So I think it's a couple of things. It's one, to be very clear and transparent, to say, if you want to go from here to here, here are the skills that you need. Here's where you are now. Here are the gaps. I'm happy to help you begin to figure out how to close those gaps, or even try to be creative and give you a project as a side hustle, in addition to your day job, which plenty of people are excited to do, to try to get those skills. And then chances are you might be able to keep that person for an extra 6 months or an extra year.
If they're trying and attempting to grow.
Yeah, if they're trying. But the other scenario I see also, which is they have the skills, but literally their boss is there and they're looking up and there is nowhere to go. Yeah. So in that scenario, you really don't want to lose them. And so you're having conversations saying, how can we all work together and be creative? Are there other things you'd want to learn? And, maybe move laterally, or really learn something new, to have a very dynamic and active conversation saying, look, someday you might even want your bosses, the level above your boss, and that level you actually need to go over here as well as here. And so again, it's about having these conversations. Sometimes it's a very individual situation, but that's what it's going to take to get people to kind of want to hang in there while you're figuring this out.
Yeah. And here's the thing. These are just sometimes uncomfortable, honest conversations that have to be said. So when somebody's, repeatedly asking at every review to join leadership, and you're thinking there is zero chance. But why? And what can you tell them you're noticing and experiencing? And, if you're, missing deadlines here, how can you be in leadership where you have to now start having your direct reports meet those deadlines, right? Like to really explain what we're seeing and why, versus they think I'm doing a great job. And you just keep saying, not right now, not right now. They're just going to leave. And they're going to leave unexpectedly because it's been brewing that they're not happy for a while.
Yeah, the more specific you can be about where they are not meeting certain goals, it's easier to counsel them out if and when the time comes.
Yeah.
And I think to your point, it if you don't say something and it's sort of hidden, that negativity does brew more versus this is the goal. This is where you didn't meet it. And I will help you put you on a plan to adjust that. But if you don't, you're not going to be able to move up.
Yeah. And one opportunity is you don't say much and they're getting upset with you and they're being resentful of you, versus you let them know what they are doing to control this opportunity and what they could make changes with, right? So I think one is like an external thing versus an internal thing. And I think it's so important to share with them what you're specifically seeing.
Yep.
Okay. I love it.
Totally agree.
Okay. I know your middle book is all about rituals, and I love routines. I love rituals. I think a lot of us do. A lot of us crave that consistency. So why do you think rituals are important and helpful with your team members?
When I was writing this book, most people think about rituals outside of work versus inside of work. And when I started researching the ROI of rituals, why are we even talking about them at work? I created this equation called the 3 Ps of rituals. And this is what rituals give us. The first P is psychological safety. Rituals give us a sense of belonging, which we know how critical that is today. The second P is rituals give us an opportunity to connect to purpose and values. Another thing that is so critical today, especially with Gen Z coming in and taking over the workplace. And you add those two together and you get the third P, which is performance. And so, when there's that sense of psychological safety in the workplace, innovation goes up, collaboration goes up, productivity goes up, all those things happen. And when I looked at it at work, I would ask this question, and I asked people what their rituals were, and they weren't really sure. And I boiled it down to this, I call it the magic question, that every single time I asked it, regardless of the company, the leader was like, oh, this is our company ritual. And the question was, when do you feel most kind bar-ish, Chipotle-ish, well-oiled-ish, whatever you want to call it. And, I can give one example, but basically the way that book is structured is the rituals ended up populating across all aspects of the employee experience, which was really cool. So, for example, in onboarding, which we know you want to create that sense of psychological safety and belonging as early as possible.
Yeah.
Daniel Lubetsky from Kind Bar shared with me that people feel most connected to Kind during onboarding when they come together, all the new hires come together, and he shares the history, the origin story of Kind, which is when his father was saved in the Holocaust by the kindness of the stranger. And otherwise he would have died. And it's in that moment where all these new hires come together, it's giving them that sense of purpose, a reminder of why they do what they do and why they join the company and how it's something bigger than selling a granola bar. And so we all have bad days at work, but these rituals are a constant reminder. I mean, Toyota has a ritual in meetings where they share a safety ritual in the beginning of a meeting. We want to create safe cars. Yeah. And so it's very personal to the company.
So good. Well, and if you're stuck on what are mine or do I have any, I am sure you do. And even getting the team involved and asking, they might say, oh, well, when we do this, right? So I love bringing that back to the team because sometimes we're so close to the business, we can't see it.
Yeah, exactly. Rituals can come from anywhere, top down, bottom up, inside out.
Yeah.
So I would highly recommend, to get it, to ask your team members, when do you feel most connected to our company? Because what you may find is that you actually have a ritual, but you're not calling it a ritual. And sometimes just elevating it to what I say sort of ritual status can make a big difference. You're like, oh, we do have a ritual. Right. This is something that makes us feel like us.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, Erica, first of all, before I ask where they can find it, who is the perfect person to buy this book? Like, who did you write it for?
It's always so interesting. This book, anyone who is leading a team, it could be leading a team of 2 people, leading a project, leading a department, leading an entire company, really thinking about work, that somebody that wants to think about work in a new way.
Yeah.
And the flip side, I've also heard from people that are, on the younger side, coming into the workforce, looking for a new job, looking for a company where they think they might be happy, looking for leaders who get it. This also lays out, if I want a company that's thinking about work differently, these are the 7 things that I should be looking for when I'm interviewing. So again, top down, bottom up. But if I had to pick one, I'd say somebody that is managing a person, a project, a team.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. And I think a lot of the business owners that are listening, some already have teams, some are getting started. Some have teams, but they haven't been able to lead them because they have been so busy being the business owner, right?
Yeah.
And they're supposed to be a leader, but they've also have to be wearing 62 other hats, and they haven't gotten around to really leading and managing. And I think just starting to learn what true leadership looks like is such an important skill set. So, Erica, thanks for being here. Where can they go find the book?
You can find the book, but wherever books are sold. You can get it from your local bookstore. Go on Amazon. It's available for pre-order right now. Or go on my website, which is just my name, ericakeswin.com. And if you want to reach out, you can always send me an email at erica@ericakeswin.com. I can even send you some information. And I even have a free ebook from Bring Your Human to Work that anybody that writes me, I send them that as well.
Amazing. And what was the launch date of the book?
September 26th.
Okay, amazing. Erica, thank you so much for your time. Congrats on your latest book and all of the other amazing things you've already brought to our community. I appreciate you so much.